Hello and welcome to my preview for Leeds United versus Sunderland. It is currently very early in the morning on Monday. This is being recorded ahead of time, so I'm going to break things down relatively quietly because I've just watched WrestleMania and I'm very tired. The Whites are looking to bounce back against Sunderland in what could be a very big game, and there are a lot of lineup decisions to be made. And Sunderland are far from a walkover, so I'm going to dive into what the lineup decisions are, where Leeds United are likely to go with them, and ultimately what this means for the game itself. But first, subscribe. Cheers. It's one click. I massively appreciate every single one. Anyway, diving into it. We've got some decisions to make on the team, and they are not small decisions. They're pretty big ones. It's not a matter of rotate one or two players around. It's fairly hefty, and I think the first place that is up for discussion right now, well, according to many people, is number 9. I'll get to that at the end. Ha 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 ha. Stick around. But first, I want to talk about the midfield. The midfield in the past few games has looked fairly ropey, missing. Glenn Kamara seems to be relatively low on energy. You can tell that Ilya Grove is just coming back from injury, and what was a nice ball retention duo we had there seems to be struggling with the passing at the moment and isn't creating many opportunities in front of them, which means that at the same time, and I'm going to consider Jorginho Rutter as part of the midfield here because it's technically a 3, but he's a little bit ahead. You get a few bigger issues because you can't get the ball into Rutter consistently enough, and when you do, he is surrounded by players, which is causing some pretty big problems, which we really need to solve. And whilst the Gruev and Kamara pairing worked really effectively throughout the start of this year, there's an argument maybe for Gray hopping into there. You could even talk about Ampadu coming in with maybe another centre-back, but that feels a little bit more risky. And in terms of changes at the back, you also have to consider right-back. Archie Gray, fantastic. But if you've pushed him into midfield, you've got a decision to make at right-back. Do you play Sam Byram or do you play Connor Roberts? And in my opinion, I think you maybe have to go Roberts of the two, but at the same time, Gray is still part of the conversation, and they all offer slightly different things. Byram is, nice hiccup, more solid defensively, whereas Archie Gray, when he pushes forwards, will tend to cut inside a little bit, and Connor Roberts prefers to sort of hug the touchline. Very different styles, and basically whichever one you go for depends on who you pick to play on the wings. If you're playing Dan James out on that right wing, he's also going to hug the touchline, so if you play Roberts, James, potential issues. You're going to clog up the areas and you're just going to give yourself more problems than you are solutions, which isn't really what you want from a football match, is it? Then if you play Nonto and you play Archie Gray behind, then you've got the issue of they're both sort of inside, which means that you've got those wide areas you're not using and you get a little bit Jesse Marsh, which isn't good, and you need to be using all the space you can up top, because if you do that, you make sure that you are providing assistance for your number 9, of whom there has been a lot of discussion, because Patrick Bamford has been off the boil for the last 3 games, and I completely agree. He has not been at the standard we need, and Daniel Farke has a big choice to make ahead of the game against Sunderland. Whether he plays Bamford, pops Joseph in there, brings Piru back into the mix, all very good questions and all decisions that will need to be made. I'll get into what I think is going to happen a little bit later on, but basically I don't think Bamford's been good enough the past few games, and at the same time, you don't necessarily want to bring Mateo Joseph into what could be a very, very tough situation, because if you get 60 minutes into a game and he's being bullied off the ball left, right and centre, what do we do then? Because we're already of the opinion that Bamford isn't good enough or Piru's a 10, and you just bring yourself even more problems. But before we work out exactly what the lineup's going to be, we need to work out exactly how Sunderland will play, and they have a very, very heavy reliance on one player. So we might think that we're quite reliant on Somerville and Rutter to create and score chances. They're heavily reliant on Jack Clark, to the point that on, I think it's whoscore.com, he's their only player with an average rating of more than 7 this season. He has a 7.62. He scores, he creates chances, he is their entire creative unit, and he's been missing recently, which explains why they've only won once in their last 10 matches. They've not created very much. Admittedly, they beat Cardiff 2-0, created a lot of XG in that one, but at the same time, when they have a lot of XG, they vastly underperform it. They've scored 10 goals fewer than they were expected to this season so far, which is really bad, especially when they also concede a vast number of chances. This means we're going to get more and more opportunities to put goals past them, whilst when they get opportunities, they're significantly less likely to put them past us, which means that basically, if we create at the rate that we tend to, we'll be okay. In the middle of the park, they tend to be relatively open, but considering the way that our midfield has been struggling with a congested central area, we could likely see them change the way that they play just to combat that. Basically, I think Sunderland will do a lot of adapting to us because that's how a lot of teams tend to play against the top sides. So how do the Whites need to set up? In my opinion, I think the use of that Roberts and Nonto combo will provide a brilliant balance, especially playing against that Sunderland side. Roberts is great at the defensive side as well as getting forward, so he can help to sort out Jack Clark. Nonto has plenty of pace, and whilst Dan James might be more of that sort of wing-backy hybrid thing that works out when you're dealing with a good winger, I still think Nonto's creativity and ability to cut in on his left foot is key. In addition to that, ball retention is an absolute must in the middle of the park here. Sunderland tend to like to have more than half of the ball, which, fair play to them, they do reasonably often, and when they do, they tend to pick up some points. So, of their most recent matches, they've picked up points in 3 of their last 10. 2 of those, they had more than half of the ball. Outside of that, mostly less than half the ball. They lost to Huddersfield, but Huddersfield did what they did with us and just basically shithoused it. In addition to that, whichever striker starts, we need someone that's got energy. If we're getting into training on Tuesday morning or fitness tests and we're seeing Patrick Bamford struggling with moving, I don't think it would be the right decision to pick him to play in this game. Purely because we need that movement, we need that flexibility, we need to actually challenge their back line right now. And Bamford, we don't know if he's playing with a knock, we don't know if he's just tired, but he's not got that movement right now. So either he switches it on for Sunderland, or if he doesn't, we need to be ruthless with our changes in game. If it's not working out, switch it. Make the changes. We have good enough players in the squad. It's just about picking the ones that are right for the situation. And using the subs bench is a big part of that. So I quite desperately hope that we are able to make the right decisions, make the right subs, and eventually crack through Sunderland. Ideally, we crack through them at the very start and we win something like 7-0, but I am not willing to make a prediction like that right now. Anyway, my predictions for the game? I think I'm probably going to go with a Leeds win. I know I keep saying this, but we are, at the end of the day, a better side than Sunderland, which doesn't always translate to the scoreline, but in this case, I hope and think it will. But let me know what you think in the comments down below. Like the video if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you haven't yet. It is massively appreciated. You could even become a channel member. Something like $1.49 a month or something. I've made it as cheap as I can, and all new memberships are going to Prostate Cancer UK. So, brilliant cause. And yeah, hope you enjoyed. I will see you later. Early morning recordings. I'm so tired again. Why am I doing this to myself?